Hey, good day, folks. Welcome to Andrew's Life. I hope everyone's doing great today. Uh, what you guys are looking at is a video of the house that I used to own in Lewisburg, Tennessee. I've told you stories about this house, and if you go back and you watch some of my Lewisburg videos, I do drive by this house. But back when I was telling my story about my experience with new construction, I don't think there was quite as many people that were listening to my story closely because at that time it wasn't as much of a topic of discussion as it appears to be today. But I figure now that you got a lot more people coming forth and they're speaking on the poor workmanship of many of these new houses, I would tell my story once again, except this time I'm going to elaborate a little bit more than I did in the past. So here's a picture of the house I used to own in Lewisburg. Now, I purchased this house back in 2008. The house was built in 2007, but they didn't get done with the construction until 2008. Now, I was the first one to live in this house. I purchased this house brand new. And what you guys are looking at is a image of the area of what it used to be back during the late 2000s. Now, if you come around this area now, you're this is not what Lewisburg is going to look like anymore. But this is what this part of Lewisburg used to look like back in the day. So for those of you that are watching me, and maybe you're a native of Lewisburg, you're familiar with southern middle Tennessee, uh, let us bring back some memories to you guys. This brings back a lot of memories to me. I mean, I've created a lot of good memories in Tennessee, especially in Lewisburg. Made some real good friends in Lewisburg. I miss that little city. But for one, I'm pretty sure it's a lot different than what it used to be. I know the housing prices are a lot higher. I know many of these neighborhoods are full of these cheap, low grade quality houses, more so now than it was back when I was in Lewisburg. But, anyways, I'm going to tell my story about my experience in new construction and why it is anymore I do not buy new construction, and I don't encourage any of you looking to buy a house to buy new construction. I encourage people to buy pre existing. So, here's now for starters, uh, there is a house behind this one. Let's see if I can show you guys. This house used to be this used to be my neighbor right here. Yeah, this used to be my neighbor right here. I'm gonna try to keep it at '07 because I don't want to, I want to be respectful of the people who are currently living in this house today. So just to keep this video as respectful as I can keep it, I'm gonna keep it at the image of November of 2007. So now we're gonna go back to the original image. Well, let's see how did I get there. Well, for some of you, this can be memory lane. Okay, here's my house again, the one I used to own. It's got a gravel driveway. It's got the back deck, which, by the way, at the time that I had this home inspected, the inspector pointed out that this deck was not attached to the house. And plus, the crawl space had no vapor barrier. And on top of that, there was also all type of garbage down here, like old, like construction debris. Rather than taking the debris to the dump like they were supposed to, they decided to just put it in the crawl space. And I noticed over the years when I lived here, I would say about every couple of weeks, whenever I go and cut my grass, different pieces of debris were washed up in the yard because they basically buried the debris. They put most of it in the crawl space here, and then throughout the property, I guess they decided to bury pieces of their debris to avoid having to pay a dumping fee. And here's a picture of my neighbor's house at the time, just so you guys know what these houses look like when I continue to have this discussion. Now, let's see here. I'm going to try to turn you guys around here. Like I said, for some of you old school cats who are familiar uh, with West Lewisburg, this might bring back some old memories down memory lane. Like if you come around here now to West Lewisburg, this house is no longer standing. They tore it down. This this used to be a trailer. They tore it down as well, and they now have a bunch of newer houses in the area. Let's keep on going. And this house right here, I can't remember. I think the house is still standing. I think it is. Now this house right here is definitely not standing. It's tore down. And then here's my house, back when it was first built. Let me turn you guys around here. This is an older one. Okay. Go back to 2007 here. And for those of you that want to know what the area looks like nowadays, I'll give you a quick glimpse of what the area looks like today. I mean, you'll see this on my Lewisburg video, but just for just for the fun of it, I'll show you what it looks like. Now, this is back in 2022, but this is pretty much what you can expect to see today in this area. See, here's the house that used. Here's the new. See, look at all these. Now, this house was here before, back when I was in Lewisburg. This is a newer house. Now, this house over here, this is new. It wasn't there. That yellow house was there. This house, it's a newer house. This is where the little white trailer used to be. Used to be around this area. No, like here, no, I take that back. This used There used to be an older trailer in this area, but looks like they got rid of that trailer and put this looks like a double wide there. And then this brick house on the corner. That's where the white trailer that you saw a minute ago used to be. So now this house is sitting there. This house was there. This house was there before. This house is new. Or it's newer. Now we're gonna go back to this image of 2007, and I'm gonna continue to talk. I just thought I would make things a tad bit more interesting and just kind of show you guys what Lewisburg used to look like and what Lewisburg looks like today, at least that part of Lewisburg. And for those of you guys that are from Lewisburg, you're familiar with Lewisburg, uh, I guess welcome to memory lane. So let's see. All right, let me. All right, I just had to look at something on my phone real quick. All right, let's keep going. So my experience with new construction has been, well, it's been negative, like much of you guys' experience in new construction has been. Maybe not as bad as some of you other people out here, but negative. Like I'll give you like for one, I've been told by a couple of my neighbors who watched this house be built that's at the time that the people that built this house, they took some of their debris and they spread it throughout the property here. Because when I know that's true because when I went to cut my yard, I would say every couple of weeks I would, a new piece of debris or would wash up in the yard. And they took a bunch of their debris and they put it underneath the crawl space, like I told you at the beginning of the video. And they also took some of the debris and they mixed it in with the concrete right here, where the porch is at, because they didn't want to pay a dumping fee. And another thing which I noticed about this house shortly after I moved in was the foundation started cracking all over the place. Some of the cracks were about the size of a nickel. I mean, they had the thickness of a nickel. So the foundation started cracking all over the place. And this is all within the first year that this house was built. And also a few shingles fell off the roof. And I bought the house. Now I closed on a house in somewhere in the late summer of 2008 is when I closed on this house. Now by early summer the following year in 2009, my air conditioning ran out of Freon. Now, any air conditioning unit that's brand new does not run out of Freon. But the fact of this house air conditioning ran out of Freon goes to indicate to me, it went to indicate to me that the air conditioning unit was most likely not a new unit, it was most likely refurbished. And another thing that I noticed about this house was there's one day that I went to close a couple of my doors and my doors did not close the way they were supposed to close. And another thing I noticed about this house as time went by, and I talked about this on previous videos, but I'm going to talk about it briefly again. I noticed when I look up at the corners of the house, the corners are supposed to be 90-degree angles, but not all the corners were 90 degrees. A lot of the corners were less than 90 degrees. Now I know for some of you, you're like, okay, who cares? That's minute, who cares? But anyone that truly knows about construction knows that that kind of information is more significant than what it sounds, because it just goes to indicate that this house was not built right. The quality of the build was shoddy. And there was also a couple of areas in the house that I remember to where the floors were not even. I realized that compared to what some of you guys been through, what I'm pouring out is small change. But the point that I want to make on this video is shoddy new home construction is nothing new. It's been going on for, I would say, close to the last 20 years at least. And when people try to blame it on the 2020 virus, that's BS. Because again, shoddy, shoddy new home construction's been going on way before the virus of 2020. In fact, the other house that you guys saw earlier in the video, my neighbor's house at the time. My neighbor told me one day that he went to jump in his tub to take a shower and he fell through the tub. He ended up in the crawl space. and he had to call the contractors to fix his tub because apparently when they built the house they didn't put in any supports. So one day he went to go take a shower and the tub cracked and his foot fell through into the crawl space. And another thing that I want to point out is, I told you this earlier, but when the home inspector inspected my house here, inspected my house here, the crawl space had no vapor barrier. Now, why is that such a big deal? Well, when you're living in southern Tennessee where it's humid, especially during the summer, uh, the vapor barrier helps prevent, the vapor barrier will help prevent your house from having a bunch of excess moisture. Because if the house has too much moisture inside, then it's the perfect recipe for mold. And in some cases, it can even be the perfect recipe for termites. Now, knowing what I know about houses today, I'm not saying I'm any kind of an expert, but just based off of me buying and selling a crap load of houses, knowing what I know about houses today, number one, I would never buy a new house like I told you guys before. Secondly, if I looked at a new house, or let's say I was a realtor and I had a client and they looked at a new house and they saw the kind of defects that I'm discussing that I experienced on this house, if I saw that, I would tell my client, don't buy this house. You would do better looking at a pre-existing house that's been well maintained over the years than to buy a new house like this. And there's a house like if I were to, well, at the time anyways, if you were to walk a little further this way, like through the yard here, there was another house. And at the time the color of the house was silver. Gray, silver, whatever you want to call it. I met that woman. I don't know if she's still living there anymore, but at the time she was there. I met her, nice person. But she told me that whenever it rained, the back of her house would flood. And the same person who built her house built my house, and they built my neighbor's house. And there were some times where when these things started going wrong that I discussed, like the shingles falling off the roof, the air conditioner, and just some of the stuff inside, I did reach out to the builders at the time. Now, to be honest, I forgot who they were. But even if I knew who they were, I wouldn't share it with you guys anyways, just for my own protection. But I did reach out to let the builders know some of the things I was seeing, some of the things I was experiencing. And all I got were a bunch of crickets. Like when it came to my air conditioner, the air conditioner quit working and it was in the middle of July. So I had to go in my own pocket and have them come out and fix the air conditioner for me. Now the shingles, if I would have kept the house, I would have ultimately had to fix that, but I didn't fix the shingles because at that point I was head over heels in debt. My money was funny. This house is falling apart. So I at that point had no plans of hanging on to the house due to financial challenges at the time. So, but I did reach out to the builders, and I told them everything that was going on. I told them about the foundation. I told them about the roof. I told them about the corners not being 90 degrees, and I talked to them. I talked to one of the people who I guess worked for the company, and I even wrote a letter. And I got nothing but straight crookeds. I got nothing. They didn't. They didn't respond. They didn't say nothing. They didn't do nothing. Whatever I had done to this house, I had to pay out of my own pocket to get it done. I say all this to say that this issue with shoddy new construction, like I said, it is not anything new. It's got nothing to do with 2020, with the 2020 virus. It's something that's been going on for, I would say, at least the last 15 to 20 years or so. Now, has it gotten worse ever since the late 2000s? I would say the answer to that is yes. Has it gotten even worse ever since the virus of 2020? Again, I would say the answer is yes. But it's definitely not a new issue. And this is the reason why I would never ever again buy a newer house. For those of you that are looking to buy a new home because you don't want to do a bunch of renovations, you don't want to have to deal with a bunch of repairs, I am sorry to be the bearer of bad news for you people, but any house you buy, regardless of the age, you at some point you will have to make some kind of repairs. It's not a matter of if, it's going to be a matter of when. And then as far as what you'll have to repair, well, hopefully it won't be anything that's too expensive. But the truth of the matter is, if you're going to be a homeowner, I don't care if you buy brand new, I don't care if you buy pre-existing. I don't care if you buy something built in the 1800s. At some point, you will have to do some kind of repairs. Whether you do it yourself or you pay a contractor, you will have to make some kind of repairs. So whenever you get ready to buy a house, it's always a good idea to budget some kind of money for repairs. Preferably, I would say, try to budget at least $10,000 for repairs, at least 10. Now, as far as buying a house, I would say, in my opinion, the golden years of real estate construction when it comes to residential is, I would say, the golden years are from the mid 1980s to the mid 1990s. Because in my opinion, after the mid 90s, that's when companies start taking shortcuts. That's when the workmanship of some of your houses start getting a little shoddy. I mean, I remember back when I was living in Tennessee, back in '06, I was looking to buy a house. I looked at several houses in Springfield, Tennessee, and there were a couple of houses I looked at. One was built in '99, and one was built in 2000. Now the one that was built in '99 was in terrible condition. The foundation had big cracks in it. The cracks were so big that I can take a quarter and stick it in the crack long way and stick it in the crack the long way. Like, let me see if I can find a quarter for you guys here. I'm gonna illustrate what I'm talking about here. Let's see if I got a quarter in here. Well, I don't got no change on me, so I mean, basically, people, the cracks on that house are so big that honestly, I could take something like this key fob right here, and I can stick it in the crack long ways, just like this. And I would say damn near the whole thing would fit in that crack. That's how bad the foundation of that particular house was in Springfield, Tennessee. And then, of course, when I went inside that house, the doors didn't close like they were supposed to. The floors were uneven, and the houses had a whole host of issues that were mainly structural. And I looked at another house out there, which was built in 2000. It was in the same neighborhood, built by the same people. Now that house, the foundation was okay, but then when I went inside the house, there were a bunch of things that were broken that shouldn't have been broke for a house that new. Because remind you, this is 2000. I'm talking 2006 now, and these houses were built only 6 to 7 years prior. So the house I went in that was built in 2000, there were a bunch of things inside the house that was broken that shouldn't have been broken. Like, for an example, The, you know, the kitchen cabinets were tore up, and the bathroom floor was weak. Like if I would have kept on, like if I would have took one good stomp at the bathroom floor, I probably would have been standing in the crawl space of that particular house. So I would say when buying a new home, when buying a home, I would say the sweet spot for real estate construction, for residential real estate construction, is from the mid 80s to the mid 90s. Because during that era, the houses are old enough to where they were still built with quality materials. Many of the builders at that time still took pride in the work that they did. The quality of the materials was still decent. They built houses with real wood, not this cheap compressed sawdust. And a brick house was still a brick house, not that cheap crap that they use today. And at the same time, those type of houses were still new enough to where they're still new enough to where you don't have to deal with lead-based paint. When it comes to, let's say, your electric, you don't have to deal with glass fuses. The electric boxes have already been converted to your circuit breakers, so you don't have to deal with glass fuses. And in some of your houses that were built, especially in the 90, in the early and mid 90s, depending on who the depending on who the construction company may have been at that point, they have already quit using galvanized plumbing and they have moved over to PVC. Now, one bad thing about PVC is when PVC is exposed to a lot of air, it does over the years it will get weak, and it will get so weak that it you can break it like a piece of peanut brittle. That's how weak it gets once it gets old. But with PVC, if it's underneath the crawl space, you should be okay. Unlike galvanized plumbing, PVC, you don't really have to worry about any corrosion, and plus it's easier to work with and it's cheaper compared to galvanized. So sometimes when you buy a house built in the 90s, you can, you may not have to deal with an old galvanized plumbing. I hate galvanized plumbing. Anyone that knows anything at all about plumbing or home construction realizes that if you buy a house, especially today with galvanized plumbing, chances are pretty strong that you will have to replace your plumbing. Because as galvanized plumbing gets old, it corrodes from the inside out. And as it corrodes, you'll get to the point where you might cut on your water and you'll start having particles in your water. This will be from the galvanized plumbing. Your water pressure will start not being the way it should be due to all the buildup. So yeah, FYI, if you buy an older house and it comes with galvanized plumbing, go ahead and budget for a new plumbing job because sooner or later you will most likely need it. Now, if you buy a house with PVC, you might be okay. Now, if it's underneath the crawl space, most likely you'll be okay. If it's PVC plumbing that's, let's say it's they got it to where it's exposed to the air. Like I had a house in. Let me think if I give you guys an example here. If you buy a house with PVC plumbing, that's, let's say it's connected to the outside of a wall. I would say again, plan to replace your plumbing because at some point that PVC plumbing is gonna get super weak it's going to get so weak that it's going to start breaking like some peanut brittle. Hopefully, I'm making sense. Now, if you get lucky and you buy a house to where the plumbing has already been updated to PEX, you're good to go as far as it goes for plumbing. I thought I would just share that piece of information with you guys for those of you guys that are looking at buying a house that may never owned a house before. So yeah, again, the golden years of real estate, in my opinion, are houses built from the mid '80s to the mid '90s. And when it comes to plumbing, try to look for something that's got PEX. If you can't find nothing in PEX, at least look for something that's got PVC. When it comes to your electric connection, when it comes to your electric, obviously you're going to want to buy something that's got the circuit breakers. I mean, a lot of mortgage, well, honestly, from what I understand, mortgage companies won't even mortgage a house that has the old school glass fuses anyway. But even if you're buying a house and you're paying cash, try to look for something that's got the circuit breakers already. Because some homeowners insurance companies won't even insure your house if it still has the old school glass fuses. Like the house I'm in right now, I bought this house and it still had the old school glass fuses. I had to update it to the circuit box in order for my insurance company to be willing to continue to cover me. So hopefully that information helps out some of you out there. So recap. Don't buy new construction. Your best bet is to buy houses built from the mid '80s to the mid '90s. If you can't find nothing like that, I'd rather have you guys buy a house built in the late 1800s to maybe the early and mid 1900s as opposed to buying anything that's even remotely new. Like this house right here, this house is built in 2007. If you look at a house that was built in 2007, my best advice that I can give you is run. Don't buy it, run. Look for something older. And another thing I want to point out is when it comes to new construction, one thing which you guys ought to realize about new construction is a lot of times if you take a drive on new construction sites, you will oftentimes see people, you will oftentimes see contractors working on those houses. A lot of times the reason why they tend to do a lot of their work over the weekend is to avoid having to deal with inspectors. Because if they do a lot of their work during the week, like they should, like they're supposed to, they know that at some point they're going to have to deal with inspectors. As where if they do it over the weekend, a lot of times they can avoid having to deal with inspectors, and therefore they can hurry up, do their little shoddy work, and then sell crap to those of you that are looking at buying a new house. Another thing to take into consideration when buying a newer house is if you must buy a newer house, and again, I encourage you not to, but if you must buy a new house for whatever reason, if you purchase a new house in a smaller community, in a smaller county, an area that's got less governments, understand one thing. Some of these some of these contractors, either A, they know the local politicians, so the local politicians and the local city officials are not going to take the proper measures to make sure that their product is being built to the proper standards, to make sure their houses or their buildings are safe for their buyers. Or two, some of these construction companies, if they're big enough and they have enough capital, they might pay off some of your local politicians. They might pay off some of your local city officials to simply look the other way. Or if they see something that they're doing that they're not supposed to do, they'll pay them to basically shut the hell up and look the other way and act like nothing wrong is going on. Yes, these things do happen more than what many of you would like to realize. And sometimes they happen in major cities and suburbs as well. But they happen more so in smaller communities than they do in the metro. So I know this has been a long video. I'm 35 minutes in, but I just had a lot of information that I feel is valuable for you guys to know when buying a newer house. So I'm going to leave you guys right here. You guys stay blessed. Good luck on your home shopping for those of you that are looking at buying a house. And I will see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.